Hey everyone, Christian here again, and this video is being recorded right after the Fairchild Botanical Garden video, so it's as if nothing, no time has passed. Maybe for you a couple days has passed, but for me it's been about 30 seconds. So I was going to make this series one video, but I actually tried to, and it was getting to the 25-minute part, and I was like a quarter of the way done. I'm sure no one's going to watch a video that's an hour long discussing botanical gardens. Um, so, the next garden I want to talk about in this series is Montgomery Botanical Center, known as MBC. So, this garden is situated next to Fairchild, just to the south of Fairchild, right around 120th Street and Old Cutler Road in Coral Gables. It's a I should note that this is a beautiful area of Miami, general Miami. I know it's in Coral Gables, but if you, for example, if you write a letter and you send it to an area, any town in Dade County, you can write Miami, Florida, and it's just sent there. I'm going to call. I mean, the neighborhood is important. Coral Gables has a lot of history, um, and is a beautiful town. I would recommend visiting all of Coral Gables and experiencing what it has to offer. So, with that said, Montgomery Botanical Center. So this is, I forget the exact address. It's somewhere around 118th, 120th Street and Old Cutler Road. You can look it up. I think it's mbc.org. And to understand how MBC works or Montgomery works, you have to know sort of the history of how Fairchild and Montgomery came to be. So, Montgomery is named after General, I forget his name, Montgomery, and he was a World War I veteran or a Spanish War veteran. I can't remember, um, but it was around the very early 20th century, and he bought this property. I want to say like around 1915. I should know more about this, but I didn't look it up. You can look it up. It will give you a better history than I would in a YouTube video. So through time, I believe he got to know David Fairchild, and Fairchild would collect plants and bring them to him throughout the world. It was the only way you could get a hold of plants where there's no internet or no phone. There was, I guess there was phones and radios. Phones came about. I mean, they were around, but they weren't commercially used. So the really only way to get new plants was to sort of just word of mouth. Go to a place, meet a guy, hope you went to the right place, and that could take months. So collecting plants was very difficult up until the age of, I mean, really up until when the internet started, and the ability to meet people so fast from around the world. So Montgomery he kind of had separated in his will, had separated Fairchild as a display garden, and Montgomery itself as a like a research center. And his house still stands there. There's actually someone that lives there, the head of the garden. Very nice guy, and approachable, and in my opinion, just a great guy to chat with about plants. Again, I don't like to name names on here. You're welcome to go look it up. But at some point in the 90s, after Montgomery's wife had passed away, the will had kind of gotten a little bit weird, and there was this power struggle with people that knew. It wasn't even like relatives, I don't believe. It was more amongst people that wanted control of these properties, which were priceless because you're sitting like on Biscayne Bay in Coral Gables. They were priceless back then, and now they're even more so priceless. I don't even want to think about how much 80 acres on Biscayne Bay and Coral Gables is worth, but it's going to be unreal. Back then, there wasn't much. No one really wanted to live like in a mosquito-infested area when there was no air conditioning. So this garden was sort of started. I want to say I see a lot of the collection numbers coming from the 70s and 80s, and when you look at the tags, but the 90s is sort of when that started. I want to say that Montgomery's wife passed around 1990, and there were people that worked at Fairchild, and there are people that worked at Montgomery, and they did not get along. As a result, there's sort of this there's this, I don't want to say a rivalry because they don't do the same thing really, but there people really didn't at the top didn't want the two gardens to really have much interaction with one another, and I think there it was really kind of bureaucratic, and from the average person like myself or watching this that enjoys plants, honestly they really don't care, but you really wouldn't care why it happened, but it did happen. So that's why there are two separate places. They used to be one property owned by one person. So Montgomery is more of a research center. Now it is publicly funded. It is open to the public, but they are not going to advertise that. So if you want to visit Montgomery, you're going to want to call ahead and say, "Hey, I would like to come to the property. You know, is this time okay?" Or ask them when it would be okay. And sometimes they're really busy and they're going to say, "Yeah, this is a better time." Sometimes they can be very welcoming and will even, I'm not going to say they're going to provide a golf cart for you, but I've seen that happen. Especially, they're looking for people to help support their research, and Montgomery does do a lot of expeditions into areas like South America, and I believe areas of Asia as well. But I know South America because there is one botanist that works there, Dr. Larry Noblick, and I say I don't want to name names, but I do have nothing but positive things to say about this man. He is very humble. He has done a lot of work on Ciagris in Brazil and other countries in South America. And when I met him, he genuinely 100% cares about what he does in this profession. A lot of work on Ciagris wouldn't be finished without him. So I'm not saying you're going to have the red carpet rolled out for you, but you can come there and take a look around. And it is, in my opinion, very underrated. It's a beautiful, from the house that sits on that ridge I talked about in the Fairchild video, and it overlooks a huge lake, and beyond that is the bay. Now there isn't like a water access. You can't like go to the bay and go swimming or anything like that. It's kind of swampy there, and that's been kept that way on purpose as for environmental reasons. But you kind of get this area that's low-lying where you have plants and specifically palms that enjoy having a lot of water around them. And even there's a freshwater, I think it's probably slightly brackish because of how close it is to the bay. But there are a lot of palm species that you will not see even at Fairchild. A lot of, like, one that's really stands out that, in my opinion, I don't think I've ever done a video on, is Ravinia xerophylla. Ravinia is a weird genus in that, from Madagascar, most Ravinia is best known for having the Majesty palm, which is, very water. It's Ravinia rivularis, meaning of the river. But xerophylla basically means dry loving or air loving or dry loving. But xerophylla actually grows more like a cactus than it does like a palm or anything resembling rivularis, the Majesty palm. So they have beautiful specimens of xerophylla. When I was there, I was like taken aback of how amazing it was. It's hard for me to see something in person and actually be like at a loss of words. It's one of those few times. And when I worked at Fairchild's nursery, it's literally next door to Montgomery. They actually leased the land from Montgomery as part of the deal they had when the will was separated the gardens. So I believe you can also tour the nursery if you're at Montgomery. Something you couldn't do at Fairchild, but I believe Montgomery can allow that. I don't know the specifics, but I think that's possible. So I'm trying to think, there are just species that Fairchild just hasn't been able to collect because they haven't gone on as many expeditions as Montgomery has, and they take their collections very seriously because you're working with guys who have doctorates in botany. Some of these guys are the most well known in the world. They do publish books. They have everything very well there's accessions, meaning like something that's been brought into the garden. It'll have like a date and a number attached to it, so it'll have like say it's accession number 100 of the year, it'll be like 0100 dash, say it's 2023 dash 2023. It's a very simple accession, but everything is very well documented, and I'm sure they have notes exactly where they collected everything. So from a scientific point of view, they take things much more seriously than Fairchild does. Not saying that Fairchild doesn't. It's just that they take those extra steps to kind of make sure everything is done, from someone that would be, doing this professionally as a botanist. So, yeah, really, the now I don't believe it costs anything to go to Montgomery, which is the big plus. But you do want to call them and discuss. I've never had to call them and ask them to come to the garden, so I don't know how that process works. But I do know that you can't just show up at the front gate and say, "Hey, I want to come in." But you can access the garden. It is a publicly funded entity. So I would, give, as far as this is going, just off plants. I would give the garden probably it is the same as Fairchild, 9 to 9.5 out of 10. I mean, it is quite amazing, the diversity, the beauty there, and to see both of those gardens. I would take 2 separate days to visit Fairchild on one day, Montgomery on another. So again, in a very busy area of just south of Miami. So make sure that you have those plans in place. You don't want to drive from out of the area and be stuck in traffic for half the day. So I hope that was a useful, helpful, way of knowing about Montgomery Botanical Center. It's one of those lesser known areas. So I hope, like I said, I hope that was useful. If it was, give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing, hitting that bell notification. You can see when I upload new videos. If you have any more questions about Montgomery Botanical Center, you can leave a comment down below, and I believe you can also go to mbc.org. So thank you for watching. See you next time.